We are live on YouTube.
Do I need to open it from here? Just so everyone knows, we are live to YouTube.
Madam Clerk, I understand that we are live now.
We are live to YouTube. We're going live to Shaw in 30 seconds.
Okay. Just going to rearrange my screen here and I see Councillor Gardy. We have Councillor Christian. There he is.
I think we have all of council except Councillor Scott, although I don't see Councillor Shoemaker.
Yeah, I'm looking for Councillor Shoemaker right now. I don't have him.
We are live on Shaw.
Okay, well, we'll get going, and when Councillor Shoemaker joins us, I'll add him to my main screen. So I want to welcome everybody to our council meeting this evening. Happy to note that I believe this will be our last virtual council meeting. Our plan is to be in the chamber live for our March meeting, and I'm certainly personally very happy about that. I want to thank all of our media and broadcasting partners for reporting on our meeting and broadcasting it. I want to recognize the land upon which we are meeting is traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, home of Batchewan First Nation, Garden River First Nation, historic Sault Ste. Marie Métis Council, also head office of Missinaibi Creek First Nation, and want to recognize the really good work that the Indigenous Friendship Center does in Sault Ste. Marie. Thank all of them for sharing their land with us. Madam Clerk, if we can please start the meeting.
Under agenda item 1, a motion by Councillors Dufour and Bruni, resolved that the minutes of regular council meeting of January 31, 2022 and special council meeting of February 7, 2022 be approved.
All in favor? Motion is carried.
And under agenda item 3, declaration of pecuniary interest, Councillor Hollingsworth has declared with respect to the Downtown Plaza property exchange as the property owner is a friend. I have no other declarations.
Okay. Any other declarations, Council? Seeing none.
Under agenda item 4, a motion by Councillors Vezo, Allen and Nero resolved that the agenda for February 22, 2022 City Council meeting as presented be approved.
All in favor? Motion is carried.
And under agenda item 5.1, there's a proclamation regarding National Heritage Week.
I have a proclamation here to read. Since 1973, the National Trust of Canada has designated the third Monday in February of each year as National Heritage Day. And whereas Heritage Week runs from February 21st to February 27th, 2022, with the theme of resiliency, relying on our heritage foundations to hold strong and help us pivot in a changing present for the well-being of our future generations. Whereas Heritage Week provides an opportunity to celebrate heritage in all of its forms, cultural and national, architectural, archaeological, and collections. For it is these touchstones with the past that root us in the place with our diverse traditions and cultural expressions. Whereas our shared heritage and history has the power to bring people together and create a sense of belonging. Intangible heritage, language, traditional rituals, music, dance, storytelling, and more. It's the heart of family and community. Whereas Sault Ste. Marie wishes to remember those who have helped shape our identity and have forged a place in the history of our community. Now, therefore, I, Christian Provenzano, as Mayor of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, do hereby proclaim the week of February 21st to 27th, 2022 as National Heritage Week in the City of Sault Ste. Marie.
And agenda item 5.2 is a proclamation with respect to World Lymphedema Day.
Whereas lymphedema is an incurable disease afflicting more than 300 million people worldwide with disfigurement, disabilities, discomfort, pain, and distress. Whereas approximately 1 million Canadians are living and suffering with lymphedema, whether primary inherited, present at birth, or manifesting itself later in life, from genetic defects or secondary developed from bodily traumas such as cancer treatment, radiation therapy, major surgery, severe burns, or other injuries. Whereas lymphedema is an accumulation of high protein lymphatic fluid that causes swelling, which impairs mobility, function, causes pain that significantly impacts quality of life, and can lead to severe infection and the loss of use of limbs for the affected person, regardless of age or gender. Whereas there's currently no cure for lymphedema. In recognition of the severe physical, emotional, psychosocial, and financial impacts and consequences of lymphedema, it's time to support the courageous individuals living with this disability disease, as well as their caregivers and families. And 2022 marks the 7th annual year where World Lymphedema Day is observed and recognized throughout Canada and the world to increase public attention, awareness, and action related to this serious, chronic, and progressive disease. And therefore, I, Christian Provenzano, as Mayor of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, do hereby proclaim March 6, 2022 as World Lymphedema Day in the City of Sault Ste. Marie.
Under agenda item 5.3, Anti-Human Trafficking Awareness Day.
Whereas human trafficking is defined as recruiting, transporting, transferring, receiving, holding, concealing, or harboring a person, or exercising control, direction, or influence over the movements of a person to exploit them or to assist in facilitating their exploitation. Whereas on February 22nd, 2007, the Canadian House of Commons passed a motion condemning the trafficking of women and children across international borders for the purposes of sexual exploitation. The House of Commons proclaimed February 22nd as Human Trafficking Awareness Day to help bring awareness to the magnitude of modern-day slavery in Canada and abroad, and encourage Canadians to take steps to combat human trafficking. Whereas Hope Alliance is a provincially recognized anti-human trafficking coalition consisting of 30+ agencies within the Algoma region. Agency sectors include criminal justice, social services, the medical sector. Whereas recruitment begins as young as age 11 years old, 90% sex trafficking occurs in Canada. 97% of human trafficking survivors are women and girls. Whereas individuals are more at risk due to COVID-19 to the virtual platform and spending more time online, websites and apps including Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Tinder as a means to recruit individuals, and many who are requiring services and finding more services online and in person through agencies such as, but not limited to, the Algoma Family Services, Social Service Administration Board, John Howard Society, Sault Ste. Marie, Canadian Mental Health Association, Victim Services of Algoma, and the Canadian Human Trafficking Hotline. Whereas learning to recognize early warning signs of human trafficking and where to obtain necessary assistance and treatment gives families better opportunities to lead productive lives. Now, therefore, I, Christian Provenzano, as Mayor of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, do hereby proclaim February 22nd as Human Trafficking Awareness Day. We acknowledge Hope Alliance for their efforts in bringing attention to this important day, and we encourage all citizens of Sault Ste. Marie to work together and raise awareness of human trafficking in our community.
Agenda item 5.4 is a proclamation regarding Pink Shirt Day.
Whereas Pink Shirt Day began as an act of kindness in 2007 when 2 students wore pink shirts to school after witnessing a younger student being bullied for wearing one. Whereas Pink Shirt Day has evolved into a global call to action against bullying and discrimination and creating safe spaces for everyone in our schools, workplaces, and communities. Whereas we all share a collective responsibility to ensure that acts of bullying, discrimination, harassment, intimidation, and violence are unacceptable, as these could have a profound effect on an individual's sense of safety, self-worth, and ability to learn. Whereas Pink Shirt Day is an opportunity for each of us to stand up against injustice and collectively declare intolerance against all forms of bullying, recognizing our efforts to build a community that fosters respect, inclusion, fairness, equity, and compassion. Whereas Pink Shirt Day is an opportunity to actively promote and encourage respect, empathy, compassion, and kind behavior towards one another. And therefore, I, Christian Provenzanos, Mayor of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, do hereby proclaim Wednesday, February 23rd, 2022 as Pink Shirt Day in the City of Sault Ste. Marie. Before we move on, Madam Clerk, to 5.5, just in the spirit of Pink Shirt Day, I just want to recognize that a lot of people are really struggling right now due to a number of factors, a main one which is the pandemic and the effect that it's had on all of us socially and emotionally. A lot of people have made a lot of sacrifices. A lot of people haven't been able to see people over the last couple of years that they would have liked to spend more time with. And a lot of people have made significant adjustments in their own lives to accommodate and act in accord with the larger public health recommendations. And you can see and feel how people are tired and I think impatient and frankly really hoping that our lives get back to normal. And we're hopeful that can happen soon, recognizing that we still have to all be respectful of public health advice and that we all can see that the current strain of COVID is certainly a very virulent and contagious one. I think I'd ask though in the context of this, in the spirit of Pink Shirt Day, that we all dig deep and try and find as much patience as we can for each other and as much kindness as we can for each other. Because my sense of things is that a lot of people are having a difficult time and that manifests itself and shows up in different ways. But it's if you can be anything, you can be kind. And I think it'll go a long way in our community if we continue to support each other and help each other. And I want to encourage everybody to do that as best they can. Madam Clerk, we can move on to 5.5.
Agenda item 5.5, economic development update, and Rick Van Staveren, the Director of Economic Development, is in the meeting.
Good afternoon. Give you an update on economic development encompassing last year and some of the plans going into this year. In the first quarter of 2020, the transition of the economic development staff from the Sault Ste. Marie Economic Development Corporation to the City of Sault Ste. Marie began. The process entailed moving all staff, processes, functions, such as finance and operations, to direct line reporting into the Community Development and Enterprise Services service area. In 2021, the city recruited a number of staff positions, including a Director of Economic Development, a Manager of Business Development, and a Manager of Business Attraction. Team is broken down into 3 components: business attraction, which is focused on bringing businesses to the City of Sault Ste. Marie; business retention and expansion, which is focused on supporting and growing existing businesses in Sault Ste. Marie; and small business and entrepreneurship, which supports the development and growth of entrepreneurs and small business in Sault Ste. Marie. The year of 2021 was a building year for the economic development team, from the onboarding process, the implementation of CRM and sales funnel practices, introduction to the Sault Ste. Marie business community and ongoing client support, including accessing COVID-19 business supports. In the attached presentation, you're going to find a complete set of metrics that touch all aspects of economic development. We also developed an economic development impact calculator based upon recognized best practices in the economic development field. Calculator looks at overall impact that job creation has on our local economy using StatsCan data, as well as impact multipliers and local salary information to calculate the total financial impact on our economy. Key achievements for 2021 for business retention and expansion included over 150 direct engagements with stakeholders and local businesses, completion of a virtual funding forum that had 70+ participants and generated 5 potential funding opportunities, Completion of a small business survey that had over 100 participants that generated 53 follow-up calls that we're completing in Q1 22. And funding requests in process have the potential to add 20 plus jobs. Business attraction successes included follow-up of over 50 leads sourced through cold calling, referrals, or inbound calls. These calls have led to advanced conversations with 4 companies with the potential to generate over 700 jobs. Staff also engaged with 18 leads generated through a contracted lead generation firm, Return on Investment, which has identified 3 potential opportunities which could lead to an additional 100 jobs. We continue to focus on our 5 key strategic industries: advanced manufacturing, lottery and gaming, smart energy, clean tech, digital economy, and aviation aerospace. We've modified the list based upon opportunities that have been identified now to include green hydrogen, green energy, and biomass processing. The Small Business and Entrepreneurship Center handled over 511 direct inquiries in 2021. In addition, they conducted over 100 client consultations, helped start 4 new business, and hosted 14 workshops with a combined attendance of 200. The Starter Company Plus and Summer Company program had ongoing success as they have had in the past. Other notable events were the Bridges to Better Business pitch competition that generated a virtual audience of 130 participants and raised over $17,000 in cash and in-kind contributions to provide prizing for the winners. A 3 extension was also negotiated to the lease of the Canal District site, which is where the Millworks Center for Entrepreneurship is domiciled. A review is conducted of initiatives either initiated or proposed by the previous Economic Development Corporation staff to assist in our go-forward strategy. These included, but were not limited to, web development, social media usage and strategy, downtown revitalization, Port of Algoma, industrial land usage and pricing, millworks operations, business retention and expansion program, business acquisition program, sales lead generation RFP, and future marketing plans. From this review, we've built our go-forward strategy for 2022, incorporating best practices as well as new ideas. Supplementing the execution of best practices, the team is involved with several opportunities, including implementation of the Foreign Trade Zone program, the Canada Water Agency bid, and multiple funding support efforts for local businesses. We continue to work closely with NOHFC and FedNor to provide support to the business community. Staff has assembled a skilled and motivated team to advance economic development in Sault Ste. Marie. We've implemented a core toolkit and put in place processes that continue to be enhanced, such as web, social media, CRM, metrics, etc. And a number of positive indicators for the community point to future growth opportunities. These would be in our sales pipeline, industrial and commercial building permits, inbound information requests, and industry-focused strategy execution, etc. So the team looks forward to advancing economic development in Sault Ste. Marie and to providing regular updates and metrics to City Council moving forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rick. I'm not sure if there was supposed to be a screen share with that, but if there were, you might have just dove into it too quickly. But appreciate the presentation. I'll take questions from councilors if they have any. I do have a list going already. I've got Councillor Christian, then Hilsinger, then Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and Rick, thank you for the presentation and welcome aboard. Appreciate your presentation. I have a couple of questions. Under analysis, it says key achievements for business retention, et cetera, completion of a virtual funding forum that generated 5 potential funding opportunities. What exactly does that mean? You've got businesses that are looking for funding, or we have funding envelopes that we can access to help businesses?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian. What it means is that the 5, essentially there are 5 funding opportunities. So these are businesses within Sault Ste. Marie who are looking for current funding.
Okay, that's good. Let me ask you, what has been your biggest challenge since we've gone through this reorganization of the EDC, in your opinion?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian. The biggest challenge I have experienced so far really is I think COVID is a given. That has been extremely challenging, as well as just learning. I come from outside government, so as well as learning the processes and how the city works and functions.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I don't really have any other questions. I do want to make a comment. And I recognize that we're in a period of transition. It's a new organization for yourself, and I appreciate the efforts that everybody is making. But I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. As city councilors, we have to face the public when dollars are spent. And there are a lot of metrics that you can provide us going forward. The big ones will be very simple to provide. It's going to be job creation and tax levy generation. Quite frankly, I find this report similar to others. Clearly, work is being done. I see that. There's a lot of bees around the hive, but I'm not seeing a lot of honey yet. To me, it's as simple as job creation and tax levy increase. So I appreciate the work that's being done from everyone, but hopefully going forward, whether I'm on council or not, I hope that the councilors of the new term will continue to push for some simple metrics. These are taxpayer dollars that we're spending, and we need to be able to provide information to the general public that's as simple as job creation, job retention, tax levy increase. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Christian. Councillor Hilsinger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Van Stuyveren, for the presentation. Thank you for the, I guess, depth of the reporting. And it's exciting to see what's been accomplished and the goals that you have going forward. How many jobs, I did not notice this number in the presentation, but I may have missed it. Can you calculate or compile the jobs in 2021, keeping in mind, I understand it was a particularly difficult year. Is that quantifiable jobs from last year?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hilsinger. Yes, it is. We can directly attribute right now 89 jobs to 2021, and those are really done through Tenaris and through the college.
Okay, super. And so you commented a wee bit, and it's in the report as well, on the changes to how the organization was set up and things that have been done differently. And I think from going back to, I'm not as familiar with the budgets as I used to be, but going back to my time and how we're doing things now, I believe there were some savings potentially that were accomplished in this transition. And I'm wondering what you were able to, and I believe that there was an agreement that the savings would not be, they would be put back into economic development initiatives and opportunities. I'm just wondering if you could share with us any further information on how those funds were used in 2021. If they were at all, it may not have been an ideal time to do that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move this on over to Deputy CAO Tom Ver.
Sure, go ahead, Mr. Ver.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Hilsinger. The city previously provided $1.2 million to the Economic Development Corporation, which was for both economic development and tourism functions. And so when we brought the functions in-house, we split that up into the tourism and community development department, and then our economic development department. And we aligned those budgets accordingly. And then when we did the transition with the staff, there was 4 positions that were either phased out or realigned within the city structure. So that funding is what is now funding both our economic development group and our tourism and community development department. And so as it relates to economic development, previously the funding that the city provided was supplemented by the Economic Development Corporation for its operations through the rent they received from the Sutherland Call Center, or when they sold the building, obviously the proceeds from that sale. And so right now, through the realignment of the positions in the city, the money that the city provides for economic development supports our economic development staff and the activities of the economic development team entirely. So basically the savings has enabled us to be sustaining with the funding that city provided towards economic development previously. Now it covers the entire budget for that function. And then as it relates to the EDC, instead of funding from their reserves towards operations, they now have that reserve that they are investing in projects. And so we've seen them contribute to projects like the Tenaris project, the Downtown Plaza, the film pilot project. So they're using their reserves to support strategic initiatives for the city.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Ver. And then that's a kind of a follow-up into my next question for Mr. Van Staveren or Mr. Ver. I don't see any feedback and perhaps from the board themselves in terms of their impressions and how they're feeling about the new structure and just seeing about those synergies that we were hoping would be created, and then the more specifics on the reporting side on how that fund was actually used. Could somebody comment on that, please?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hilsinger, I participate in regular meetings with the EDC right now, and we have developed a number of programs together. So we do work together on, recently we did a strategic priorities exercise, and we identified, the importance of improving the downtown core. And we do have open and candid discussion on any and all opportunities that are out there. So.
Okay, super. And one last question, talking about the initiatives for 2022 and what you have coming up, I wonder if you could speak a little bit more depth, just a little bit, to any of the emerging economic development market segments that you see, and perhaps some that maybe aren't listed here, but also some of these key focus areas, like it says industrial land in 2022, or where's another one? Well, focusing on developing relationships. So is there any more details, high level details you can provide us in terms of what you're going to be focusing on to make a difference for in 2022?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hilsinger. Yeah, we've got some very exciting stuff going on as far as I'm concerned. We've been doing some extensive research into biomass and the ability to turn forest fiber into PET plastics. So those are some of the opportunities right now that we're pursuing. We've had a number of conversations around green hydrogen and the production of such, since we are such a green energy producer in this locale. And that's been a very exciting area for us to go to right now. We're having a number of very good conversations. I can tell you that 2022 is we're open for business, and I think people are starting to see that now. We're starting to have those conversations and get those calls. So I hope that answers your question. If not, I can give you more detail.
No, that works for now. Hopefully those efforts that you're valiantly undertaking turn into jobs and more assessment, as Councillor Christian mentioned. Thank you very much. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Councillor Hollingsworth, you're next.
Thank you. Through you, your worship, to Mr. Stanveen. Thank you for your presentation. My two pieces are, one, obviously we all want businesses to come to Sault Ste. Marie or start in Sault Ste. Marie and grow and survive. And the other piece is recession. We as a community has been focusing obviously on steel, but we need to be more diversified so that we can be more recession proof. So here are my questions. First question is, you talked about the matrix. You talked about, I believe, a stat about 4 businesses that have started. I think that's what I saw in the report. So my question is, then I saw in your report, does you have a 5-year survival rate? So are you now tracking a business that starts and then in 5 years to see if it's still being successful? Are you going to be measuring the growth? And in that period of 5 times, are you going to be able to help that business try to do a temperature check? So if they are struggling, you catch it early so you can help them versus waiting until they're in too much economic trouble. So that's my first focus.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth. We do have a number of metrics that we're now implementing, and it's not just within the city, but there's also through the ministry that helps support our small business and entrepreneurship center. So those metrics are designed to help start business. So we have a number of programs that help them get up and running. Once we help them get up and running, we have annual check-ins with them, and we're going to be tracking that. And these are all new metrics for us. And as we track them through, we do have a 5-year survivability. So we can go back and say, okay, how effective were we? What's their survivability rates? And establish a whole new set of metrics that we can build action plans out from.
Okay, so my other question, as you move forward in these metrics, is will you be breaking down to how many full-time jobs were created, how many part-time jobs were created, out of curiosity? And having said that, are you going to go back in time, if you can, and show new companies, new jobs that were produced in the last 5 years and let us know if they still exist? Are those possible?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth. I don't know if I can get back 5 years. We can definitely dig in and find out as much as we can. We have done some work in that area already. So the answer to that part would be a qualified yes. Let me dig into it, and I'll definitely get back to you on that part. And I'm sorry, the second part of the question was?
Basically, looking at full-time, part-time.
Okay. Yeah, so through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, yes, full-time and part-time positions are of paramount value to us to determine our success. So we're going to be looking and tracking job creation very closely. In addition, just to tracking it, we have an economic development calculator now that helps us really triangulate how much revenue that business has generated, and there's so much more business that's generated for each job that's created. It's literally mind-boggling how much, once you start looking into the jobs that are created beyond that. And if you'd want to have a conversation at another point around the actual calculator, I can take you through the details. It really is a great tool to help us track all the the job creation, and one job in most cases equals somewhere between 2 and 3 other jobs. So that's where this gets to be really interesting, because it's not just we created one position. No, we created one position, but it had a number of other impacts that created another 2 or 3 jobs.
Exactly, like construction fuels so many other jobs, as one example, from engineering, architects to supplying piping to electrical. So my other question is recession proof. Going back to a diversified economy, I think we all can agree having a diversified economy is very important. So can you comment on areas, 3 sectors or industries that you feel will give us a well-rounded, diversified economy? Granted, we can never be recession proof, but we can build an economy that will hopefully give us a consistency if times are hard. We've experienced with the steel where it's gone down and the whole community has gone down. So can you comment, besides your biomass, besides the batteries, can you comment on 3 other sectors that you're looking at, potentially building on our research in cancer, which Dr. Spatafora has been doing up in the hospital, potentially the bug lab? Can you just comment on diversifying our economy, please?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth. This is one of the major reasons that we engaged a third party to help us source leads. So right now we look at, and I still want to go back to the biomass and the green hydrogen and the green energy, because these are areas that from an economic diversification standpoint are critical, and not just critical to Sault Ste. Marie, but critical to the future and critical to our ability to meet the 2050 goals of greenhouse gas reduction. So those are the areas of the future that we're trying to focus on. Short term, from a diversification standpoint, With the implementation of the electric arc furnace, there are going to be a number of spin-off businesses that are going to come from that. One of the major, let's call it a consumable, are the actual graphite electrodes that are used in the process of heating the materials. So who's going to supply those? Who are bringing those into Sault Ste. Marie? And we're looking at that whole spectrum right now to find out, okay, where are opportunities that will help us somewhat diversify and help support Algoma Steel, which is one of our largest employers, obviously, and build us a much stronger economy for the future.
Okay, just one final question and then a comment. Obviously, we want to support Algoma Steel, but what you just alluded to hopefully will support other companies, industries throughout Canada. Manufacturing is very important. Manufacturing is important, but also professional businesses, such as, to Councillor Hilsinger's point, there's some modern professional jobs that we need to attract, from software development to cyber attack companies. And potentially, as we know, the downtown area has a lot of professionals. If we can do 80% of professionals downtown, it will attract retail, it will attract lunch, having people go out for lunch and dinner. So having said that, are you looking at professional jobs to be coming to Sault Ste. Marie? One example I just gave you was companies that look at software development and so forth. And that's my final question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, absolutely we are. And this also ties back into the downtown revitalization efforts, is that if we can create an inviting space to attract these young professionals too, that are, you know, highly educated for the most part, and are looking for that vibrant community, I believe that's a very strong focus area for us. But we are definitely focused on looking at all number of service organizations. We're looking at the high tech, we're looking at the software developers. It's all part of that downtown revitalization effort.
Okay, thank you. And I'm also happy to see that you have the employment multiplier in your report. Thank you. I look forward to hearing more updates.
Thank you.
That's all.
I apologize, I was on mute. Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Councillor Bruni?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Rick, for your report. Just a couple questions regarding the funding application, 734,000, et cetera. There's a potential 3 jobs and 600,000, potential 15 to 20. Would these funding applications, are they for present existing businesses, or would they be new businesses?
The ones you're, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruner, the ones that you're referring to are existing businesses that are expanding.
Are expanding. So
Yes.
are you basically working with them for funding applications, correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And then the advanced conversations with 4 companies, I mean, this looks good, with a potential job creation of 705. And on the same page where it says advanced conversation with 3 companies, potential job creation of 105. I mean, this looks good. It sounds good. But in reality, how positive is this?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, it's very positive. I come from a sales background, and one of the most important things you can have in sales is an active sales funnel. And essentially what a sales funnel is you start with a lot at the top and you get a little at the bottom. So from a positivity standpoint, I would say this is very positive. Eventually we're going to understand the math. And that's what one of my goals is in this position, is to understand the math, is that if we identify 700 or 800 jobs at the top of the sales funnel, is to understand that once we've gone through all the efforts and the funding and attraction that we can do and promote our city, how many of those jobs are really going to materialize? And as we go more through this process and start to understand that, we can get a little more scientific in our approach to developing business, and it can actually be much more accurate in predicting what's going to come out of that sales funnel.
Okay, and just my comment is, and touch base what Councillor Christian stated earlier. I mean, I look at job creation. I look at how we're increasing our tax base, and that's very, very important. So I hope you're successful. I mean, those numbers look great, and hopefully even half of those numbers would be fantastic for 2022. So I thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Bezo-Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Van Stavern. Rick, I want to just go to page 11 of the report, which states that there were, out of the 89 new business client consultations, 4 businesses were started. Is that correct? So that's
Yes.
that's direct from those 89 interactions.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vezo-Allen, correct.
And then if we skip to page 21 with new jobs. So number of direct new jobs being added to the community, 12. So are those 12 new jobs directly related to those 4 new businesses? And my other question would be, what are the sector of those businesses and how many people do each of them employ? So I think what we're looking for, all of us, sitting around the table right now, the virtual table, is looking for better information in terms of, sort of direct outcomes based on the numbers that you're giving us that line up in a more cohesive manner.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vezo-Allen. I don't have those specific points in front of me. I can make assumptions, but I won't. What I will
Okay.
do is I'll research them and I will give you the update that answers that question for you.
Yeah, and also on page 21, your table 8, employment multiplier by industry and geography.
Yes.
The one sector, and it is a growing sector, and I'm probably a little biased, which I've always sort of seen not being forefront with the EDC is the nonprofit sector. So the nonprofit sector locally employs hundreds of people, and it's a big, I think, sector that should have some attention to the EDC. And as well, I'm wondering, in those client consultations, what are we seeing in a percentage basis from newcomers that are coming? So newcomers outside of Canada that are coming into the community that are looking to start businesses, and as well looking at our urban Aboriginal population, First Nation populations that are looking at starting businesses as well. I think if we could have some sort of demographic of what that 89 is, then I think that sort of helps not just us looking at maybe where we need to partner or collaborate with other organizations, but also from the EDC standpoint to maybe know where there might be some gaps where you could be soliciting for new business to our community.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vezo-Allen. The first part of your question, as far as the nonprofits, the person that we brought in to do our business retention and expansion efforts, Kathleen Haymans, is very engaged right now with the nonprofits. That's part of her mandate, is to go out and meet within the community and get to know all the players and to support where we can support. That's essentially what her position is all about, to help support growth in the city, no matter who you are. She's here to help and support that. As far as the second part of your question on demographics of jobs created, that is a difficult one to capture the data from. So it's not a matter that we don't want to do it. It's a matter of really getting that available data source that we can track and feed that information back, because yes, it is very important to understand that dynamic. We do understand somewhat from our RNIP program how many people are coming into the city and what type of positions they're coming into. But I can't relate that back directly to a job created. So that is something that we are definitely exploring and want to do as well. But I don't have that data source as of yet.
Okay. But I think it would be helpful with the client consultations, if it's just a box it's a voluntary box if they want to tick. I think would be really useful in moving forward in terms of, looking at some sectors in our community that maybe we could pay more attention to in terms of, business development. Okay, thanks very much, Rick.
Councillor Gardy, you're next.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. A couple of my questions were asked already. I'll ask one to Rick or Tom through you, Mr. Mayor. In terms of our social media presence, what platforms is EDC operating on as of right now? And what's your plan moving forward over the next little while?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gardy. Currently, we're active on Facebook and we're active on LinkedIn. We do have an Instagram account, but we don't post much to it yet. And I think that's one that we're going to have to step up our efforts on. But as far as our plans, yeah, this year is going to be a fun year for us, because what we've decided as a team is to start posting on a regular basis. Every 2 weeks, we're going to be putting a post out from one of the team members, myself included, which will be something, and the topics are going to be broad ranging, but they're all going to be about supporting business and helping grow business and providing information and tips to local businesses. So you can look forward. It's going to be something I think that's quite interesting. I'm up this week. I'm still working on my article, so I will have that posted by the end of this week. But that really is our at this point, the strategy is to expand and increase our presence, to become a trusted source where people want to go, as opposed to just being another avenue to put information on. We want to create more of a buzz around it and make people want to go to that site. So that's really our largest strategy for this year on social media, but we are definitely amping up our efforts in it. We have a wonderful person that's driving that for us, and we want to keep that moving forward.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, just another question on the social media piece. And Rick, between the EDC and tourism, what kind of relationship is there amongst kind of their social media messaging, if at all? And like, Tom, or could you kind of explain that to me? Because I see different posts from different accounts, and I'm wondering if it needs to be a little kind of streamlined. I don't know if you understand this precisely what I'm saying, but that's how I perceive things. Could someone kind of clarify that? Where should I be looking for stuff as it relates to tourism and economic development? Is there one stream, or are there two or three?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gardy, I will say the tourism accounts are somewhat specific to that audience, right? As they look at drawing tourists to Sault Ste. Marie and promoting our activities here. I think Rick can speak to it, but certainly there's close collaboration between himself and Travis Anderson as they look at how we market the community, how we're using our branding to promote Sault Ste. Marie, and how we're coordinating our promotion of Sault Ste. Marie across a number of different channels. So, we are aligned in our messaging. We are working together to coordinate those things. We do think there is still a need, though, for some specific channels as it relates to, say, Rick, in business retention and attraction, for targeted at our local business community, if you will, versus some of tourism's messages, which are really, meant out beyond to bring people in and interest them in the community. So we try and complement and coordinate across the different groups and ensure that, our messaging is reaching the right audiences.
Thank you. Now, we often speak, and a couple of my colleagues mentioned, and I would have, had I spoken earlier, about, developing opportunities beyond what we have currently to diversify our economy, which are, vital. But we all know that there are, the labor market challenges that we have, and the number of vacant positions that exist in the community currently. As it relates to those opportunities, how is the EDC able to help with that and local businesses?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gardy. Well, first off, the ARNIT program is one of our key sources of bringing people in that have highly specialized skill sets. We work closely with the college. We work closely with Algoma University, and we have a monthly call with our partners across the border. and discuss opportunities because they have the same issue that we do. The biggest challenge right now in economic development, not just in Sault Ste. Marie, but in many, many markets, is workforce availability. So it's foremost in our minds on how we can do that, but we do engage regularly with the university and college. I think the college or the university with their micro-credentialing programs that they're looking at putting forward will help us with some of that. And there's some very unique programs out there that other communities are doing to help develop those skill sets, which some communities create a small university just to specifically meet the needs of a certain industry sector. And it's like a micro-credentialing. So there are ideas that we're looking at to push this forward, but definitely a challenge. Workforce is a challenge, and it's one we have to look at every day.
Thanks, Rick. Thanks, Tom. Just a couple of quick comments. One is, Rick's right. This competition for economic development in the labor market is hugely competitive across North America. So it's no easy feat. So we can often, ask for more. I'm confident that the EDC is doing what they can to address it, and I thank them for their efforts. I'll echo something that Councillor Hilsinger mentioned earlier. I think we really have to focus on opportunities that arise from the challenges to our climate and the environment moving forward. Rick spoke to us about a couple of those opportunities. I encourage those, and I appreciate that work. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Councilor Gardy. I think I've been through the list now. I'm going to add a few comments of my own before we move on. I don't want to, I was going to say quite a bit more than this, but we've been on this for a while, so I'm going to keep my comments brief. I just want to thank Rick for the presentation, and Tom, you and your team for your good work here. I think one of the most important things that we have done over the last number of years is bring this function in-house. During every election, you hear the mayor, aspirants, and the councillors talk about economic development and creating jobs and doing these things. But until recently, we didn't have those people reporting up to us. We always outsource these functions, and they're critical functions that I don't think we should have been outsourcing. And I think it's going to pay dividends, but we've got to give this team some time to get their legs under them and get going. And, frankly, we brought it in-house and then COVID hit. And COVID wasn't a great time to do economic development. But I think one of the fundamental shifts, which is a very important shift, is it is part of community development. And that's critical. And it's critical because of the competition there is for people. Municipalities all compete with each other for people. And the reality is that employers and employment opportunities go where the labor force is. That's the critical element. Whenever I've met with someone over the last 7 years as the mayor, the primary concern they have was finding the people they needed to do the jobs they needed them to do. And one of the things that we can do as a municipality is to make a prudent quality of life investments so that we're a great place to live and people want to live here. The people that are here want to stay here. They want to return here after they're educated, and that people are living elsewhere that are looking around for a place to live, see Sault Ste. Marie and think, hey, that would be a good place to live. And we also have to open up the channels that we have opened up, specifically the immigration channels. So we're doing what we need to be doing. We just need to be doing more of it. But I'm really confident in the decisions we've made to date. I'm confident in the team in community development. And then I think we will see the effort and the work that we're doing here pay dividends in the years to come. So I want to thank council for their foresight and decisions they've made to get to this point, and staff for the work they're doing. I think you can see it's comprehensive. I think it's really positive that people report up through Malcolm and ultimately through us are responsible for doing that work, so we can make sure there's accountability for it. So thank you. We're going to move to the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I have a motion just by Councillors Bezo, Allen, and Nero, resolved that the report of the Director of Economic Development dated February 22, 2022 concerning economic development update be received as information. And that is on the regular agenda, so it's open for voting.
I don't have it on my computer, Madam Clerk, so you can record my vote as in favor. All in favor? So that didn't come up on eScribe for me.
Okay. Councillor Hollingsworth?
Same, it did not come up either.
Okay. I do have everybody else. That's unanimous. And that will take us to the consent agenda. And I would just mention that agenda item 6.15 has been accepted.
I also, 6.2, I've got a request from Councillor Bruni to accept 6.2, so we'll accept both 6.2 and 6.15. And before we open up the consent agenda, I just want to acknowledge 6.5. I want to acknowledge Kiwanis Club and Childcare Woman for their very generous donations to the Rosedale Park. I thank them for those. Appreciate it. It's great that we invest in our parks for our youth that use them, and I want to thank the community partners who help us do that. In this case, Kiwanis Club and Childcare Woman. So we have a number of things on consent. Councillor Vazoal, I'm going to start with you.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I have two items. The first one is 6.4, Mill Market Architecture.
Okay.
To Mr. Vare. Tom, the renderings are beautiful. I think it'll be amazing in our downtown. My question is, will there be, when the market is not in operation, so when, we don't have our growers and our artisans there selling, is there going to be an opportunity for it to be used as community space? I know in the past, the Mill Market's been used for some art shows, as well as some meeting space and gathering space with different organizations. So is that going to be an option in the new building?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vezoil, and that's certainly our intent. And we are talking to the Mill Market about opportunities from two perspectives. One, for them to perhaps expand their operations and maybe have a storefront that's available more days of the week selling products. And then the second, as you said, could be the use of that facility for other community groups or events. So yes, that is the intent with this facility moving forward, to really try and animate it as much as we can.
Okay, that's all I have on 6.4.
Anybody else in 6.4? I do agree with you there, Councillor Vazoal. I think it looks super cool. Excited to see it. Councillor Neer, then Councillor Bruni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, in the report, you state that the conceptual plan was 2.9 million. Staff's undertaken additional review, and we can get it down, or you can get it down to approximately 2 million. Is that is that 2 million? Can it be further looked at to reduce it more, or are we talking more than 2 million? I'm trying to get a feeling on that specifically.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Nero. Staff did go through the initial estimate and went line by line to look at the different components of that. And we worked further to get some more quotes and ideas on the cost of items. So that's how we were able to bring that down to the $2 million mark, our estimate. And certainly, pre COVID and the escalation of pricing on things, I would have said our hope would be to get it down further to that, but I am just cautious right now, as we are certainly seeing the cost of materials and supplies increase and a number of things out there. So we probably would stick to that $2 million as our hopeful target for the cost of that project.
Okay, I guess close to $1 million reduction in cost is pretty significant. I mean, are there significant things that are being left out of this, or how did you get there, if I can ask?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Nero, I would say not significant things left out, but looking at how we're attacking some of the major components of the project, be it the roof and siding, and how we're treating those different components of the project. We think there may be some more cost-efficient ways to do that work.
All right. Oh, good. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nero. Councillor Bruni, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Mr. Vare, regarding all these funding applications, there's only one that has been confirmed, the 250,000. The Green Inclusive Community Building Program, you're looking at 1.75. It's a waiting decision. And then you got 450,000 for the Northern Ontario Heritage. It requires confirmation, other funding sources for application to proceed. And the Canada Community Revitalization funding, 750. thousand. If this money does not come in, where do you stand after? Like, where does the market go from there?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni. Really, I think we're optimistic. We're working all the channels as best we can to bring in outside funding for the project. Should the funding not come in, it is something we'll have to revisit our scope and our plans. There may be opportunities to do different components of the project. There may be an opportunity to look at, capturing different revenues for the building in order to help finance the investment in this facility. But before we get too far down that road, certainly we're hopeful we can attract the funders to this project. It is a great project. It'll be great for the community. And we hope we have good news for council in the near future.
And that was my next question is, what are we looking for a timeline?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni. It's a good question, certainly one we've been asking. As it relates to the federal program, we are told that they are actively under review. It was submitted some time ago. I believe it was July or August of last year. So we're hopeful we'll hear word within the next month or two on that project.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else in 6-4? Well, thanks for this report. Great project. I think it's really exciting. It's going to be great for our downtown, great for the Plaza project, and we'll keep moving ahead. So thank you for that. Councillor Vezo-Allen, do you have anything else?
Just 6.19. And just one question for Mr. Remel. Carl, in the report from WSP, the completion date. So it's saying all work be complete by June 30th, 2022, and then final paving and restoration completed by July 31st, 2022. I know a lot of people have been really anxious for the Elizabeth Street stairs. So do you think those completion dates are accurate in your terms of the scope of work?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vezo-Allen. I think the theme is 6.9. That's obviously the Elizabeth Street sewer and stairs.
Yeah.
Yes, June 30th is the prescribed completion date right now. There's enough time, provided it's awarded tonight. We'll get started right away.
Okay. There's lots of people that are excited to get the stairs back in action. So thanks very much. I have nothing further.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Vezo-Allen. So other matters on consent right now, I have Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 6.3, the report on the construction laborers.
Go ahead.
For the construction labor designation, I should say. Through you to either Mr. Nero or whoever is able to field these questions. Mr. Nero, have we seen an increase in the number of companies bidding on our projects as a result of being no longer designated a construction employer?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, perhaps Karen Marlowe or procurement and engineering, but from my limited involvement in the procurement stage, I do understand that there's been a more varying degree of the type of applicants we've been receiving. Whether they compare more favorably as far as numbers go, I believe that to be the case, but I'm not certain. And certainly welcome any member of the team to comment further. But that is my understanding that there's been more varying applications and more of them in general.
Okay, thank you. Not sure if anyone else wants to comment on that, but if
through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, I'll just add a couple of points. While we seem to be attracting a few more companies submitting tenders, that is affected a bit by the pandemic of the last 2 years and just the availability. That being said, I certainly think the pricing we've seen in the tenders we've seen market improvement.
Yeah, and that was the next question. If we look at a couple of the big projects we've tendered since being no longer designated a construction employer, I'm thinking of the new twin pad and the West End treatment plant. Have we seen that they've come in under what our estimated budget was for them?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, regarding the twin pad arena, that project came in a small degree above budget. However, I would say, just from my own view, we expected it to be a little higher just given the pandemic constraints we were under. I think you certainly see with the West End water treatment plant, that's a $35 million project. We did have competitive bidding for it. It did come in very close to budget. And it certainly, our experience as compared with the East End water treatment plant when we did the work on that project, and we were at that time bound under the former provisions of the legislation, that was a project that was difficult for us with the level of, we didn't get a lot of bids for it, and they were quite a bit above estimates.
So comparing the East End treatment plant to the West End treatment plant, you're saying in the East End, when we were a designated employer, we had few bids and it was over budget. And in the West End treatment plant, when we weren't a designated construction employer, we had more bids and it came in at, or it's coming in under budget potentially.
Yes, and I'll just turn it to Mr. Nero. I believe he can reference material that has been used in our submissions to date in this proceeding regarding the type of premium that it's estimated you would pay when you would be proceeding under the former legislation.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, extensive data in our preparations and deliberations for our position before the board, which I think, as you can see from the report, was a favorable decision, which we think is a right decision. And we hope to continue to pursue the right decision to the end. But the data, the extensive research compiled shows conservative savings of 19% at the low end to 27% at the high end. And all there's factors in there, of course, given the climate that you're doing the work in and some of the materials you're using. But in general, you'll see that a 20% savings is a very conservative, very reliable number to use on projects such as these.
And so on a $35 million project like the West End plant, we're looking at 7 million, if my math's right.
The data supports
Yes.
that would be the case, Mr. Councilor Shoemaker, yes.
Okay, and you did mention it briefly there, but my understanding, and in the report, it sets out the process we've undertaken so far, and where we're at is once we became no longer a designated construction employer, that was challenged, or one of our jobs was grieved by one of the parties that was affected by the designation, the Carpenters Union, that is, and they grieved it at the Ontario Labour Relations Board. It went to a hearing, and the hearing was heard, and the decision came out that we are, in fact, no longer a construction employer. Is that right?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Shoemaker, that is correct.
And now there is a judicial review or an appeal of that decision by the Carpenters, hoping to again try another kick at the can to overturn and make us, continue to be a designated employer.
That is also correct.
Okay. And the request here is for 100,000 to continue this legal argument, essentially.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Shoemaker, we believe that would be sufficient for this current challenge and any subsequent steps if required.
Well, you're asking for support to take this to the divisional court at this time. You've got my support to take this to the Supreme Court if you need to. We are saving an enormous amount of money under the new legislation, and the old legislation was flawed. It excluded other unions from being able to bid on our work. It's not just, this is not an anti-union position. It's an anti-monopoly position. And if it takes an appeal on an appeal on an appeal to get the decision with some finality to it, you'll have my support the entire way.
Thank you, Councilor Shoemaker. Anybody else on that matter? Councilor Shoemaker, do you have any other matters for the consent agenda?
No, all my other matters were pulled, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Hilsinger, you're next. Did you have any matters in consent?
I did not, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure if you meant
I
Counselor.
know it was the EDC matter that you said you wanted to
Yes.
speak to. Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I recall. Any other matters, council, that you have? Councilor Bruni, go ahead.
A question to Carl regarding the agenda's item 6.10 Brock Street.
Yeah, go ahead.
Has staff contacted businesses, residents around the area regarding this?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Bruni. No, that will be the responsibility of DSAB employees and the general contractor.
Will you follow up with them that they will do this, or?
I will for sure. There's a list of things that they have to do ahead of the closure happenings. There's an indemnity agreement with the city, traffic control plan being finalized, those types of things. So there are some steps they have to go through over the next few days. And one of them I'll make sure that all notified affected residents and businesses are taken care of.
Thank you.
Anybody else on that matter? Thank you, Councilor Bruni. Any other matters on consent? Councilor Hollingsworth, go ahead.
Yes, through your worship, just for clarification, was item 6.2 pulled?
It was accepted.
Thank you. That's all.
Okay, so I think that's it for consent. Madam Clerk, we'll get to 6.2 once we do the consent motion.
I have a motion by Councillors Bezo-Allen and Nero, resolved that all the items listed under date February 22, 2022, agenda item 6, consent agenda, save and accept agenda items 6.2 and 6.15 be approved as recommended.
All in favor? Motion is carried.
And agenda item 6.2 is a report with respect to the council remuneration bylaw.
You can start with you, Councilor Bruni, because you asked for this to be accepted.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thank Rachel for the report, but I will be voting against this. I think when you're a councillor or a mayor, or if you're a candidate that you're running, you should be aware of these boards, committees that you sit on, that there are no remuneration, no additional costs for the taxpayer. If you look in the past, we froze our wages as a councillor. We reduced 2 councillor positions, reduced 1 ward. And now this report comes up and says that we should be paying our councillors that sit on these particular boards. So I'm going to be very brief. I will be voting against it. I think to ask for this now, I don't understand. I don't know if a councillor has come forward for this, but you're looking at way additional costs. If you sit on DSAB and if you're a board member, it's approximately $100 a month. If you're a board chair, vice chair, it's $90 plus 35 if you're replacing the chair. If you're the chair of the board, it's $500 per month, and then you get an additional $125 for a meeting. I know I've sat on DSAB, I sat on the police board, Goma Public Health. I sit on the Conservation Authority. I do it because I want to do it. I'm not doing it because of the money. And I think councillors should be looking at that instead of asking. They already get an honorarium. They get mileage also. So I will be voting against this tonight. Thank you. And it'll be a recorded vote. Thanks.
Does anybody else have any comments on this matter? Councillor Hollingsworth, then we'll go to Councillor Shoemaker, then Councillor Vezoil.
Thank you. Through you, your worship, to the city clerk, Rachel. Refresh my memory. I was on the impression that we debated this maybe 3 years ago. Did we not vote on this 3 years ago? And if that's the case, I'm curious to know why it's coming back up. Do you recall?
I can.
Yep.
Madam Clerk, I don't recall having any debate on this while I've been the mayor of the community in the last 7 years. Have we had this in front of us, Councillor? Sorry, Madam Clerk?
I believe in 2019, there was a housekeeping bylaw to repeal orphan bylaws that amended the original 1986 bylaw. The reason that it came forward now is that there was a discussion in the fall when the Board and Committee Review Committee was bringing a comprehensive report back to council, and honoraria was brought up by one or more members of council during that review. It was felt it was beyond the purview of that committee, but that an independent report should come forward on that matter. So that's the genesis of it.
Okay, thank you. And one last question. Out of curiosity, just at a very high level, did you say other communities usually provide an honorarium additional to the councillor's honorarium when they sit on other boards? Is this a normal practice in other communities?
That's correct. We did do a scan of our Northern Ontario counterparts, and the external boards that pay honoraria pay it independently of the city budget.
Okay, thank you. I will be voting against this as well. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Just says, I've got a list here, so I'll just go over it so those of you that are on it know you're on it. Shoemaker, Vezoil, Gardy, and Nero. And my own comments, but I'll save those to the end. Councillor Shoemaker?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the city clerk just walked us through some of the history of how this got here, but this wasn't, Madam Clerk, through you, Mr. Mayor, this wasn't a request by council or a resolution of council or even a resolution of that subcommittee to bring this type of report forward. Am I correct in saying that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, that's correct. There was a discussion around the Board and Committee Review Committee. It was felt that it was beyond their mandate, and that it would be brought forward separately. That's where it came from. It did not come from a council resolution or request for report.
Okay, thank you.
This is a staff recommendation. To be clear for the general public, it's a staff recommendation.
I've got a couple thoughts on this. First off, there is nothing wrong with the current system. I think the current system works well. If there is to be a discussion about council remuneration, it shouldn't be, well, you get this much for sitting on this board or this much for sitting on this board. I think all that's going to do is drive councillors, and not any of my esteemed colleagues here, but we know there have been stories of past councils where someone wants to sit on this board because the honorarium's higher than this other board. Well, that's a silly way of doing business. We should sit on the boards that we have an interest in. We should sit on the boards where our skill set matches the skills required by the board itself. We shouldn't be looking to sit on boards because you'll get an extra 50, whatever the case is. We get paid for our council positions, and I don't think any of us are doing this for the extra small honorarium that would come with this. But I do think it would skew the entire system of people putting their names forward for certain boards. So I don't support this. I don't think the current system's broken, and I don't think it needs fixed. And so I'll be voting against this as well.
Okay, thank you. I see you, Councillor Dufour. Next, Councillor Vezoil.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment, and thank you, Rachel, for the report and also bringing forth other communities and what their practice is. I support this motion. I don't believe that people enter into public life for the honorarium. And I would also like to see more younger people get more involved in running for council and being on council. And I think this would help them with costs associated with sitting on all these outside boards, especially in terms of daycare or babysitters or childcare. I think all of us are in a pretty good position in terms of everyday life. We're all of a certain age, but I want to see definitely more younger people. And I don't think anyone's doing it for the money. And I think it's also equitable because you're sitting beside someone who is getting an honorary, and because you're the elected official, you're not. So I think it just creates equity across the boards. But I also want to see more younger people, people that are new in their careers get involved with council. And there is a large time commitment. I know my time commitment with police board. I know all of my colleagues that sit on DSAB, the time commitment. And I think it just helps defray some of those costs, especially in terms if you're paying for childcare or other associated costs with being away from your family. So I am going to support this motion. And thank you, Rachel.
Councilor Gardy.
My questions were asked and answered, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Nero.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One question before I make a comment. When would this take effect? Is this for this council or are we talking about the subsequent council?
Madam Clerk, do you want to answer that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Nero. I would think it could take effect on the next fiscal for honoraria.
Well, I think you might need to, I think once we pass it, it'll likely be effective. Mr. CEO, what's your perspective on that?
To you, Mr. Mayor and Council, the bylaw would be passed if it were just passed as being revised and recommended, then it would take effect on after passage of that bylaw. Council could direct that if it did want to go with the recommendation to have the bylaw approved, that it not take effect until the next term of council, if it so wished.
Okay. Okay, understanding that now. At first I thought that it was a good idea because there is a mix when we sit around the table at some of these levy boards. And some people are getting paid and there's those of us who are sitting at that same table that's included in our honorarium. I think if you're going to look at something like this, I think you have to look at the bigger scale and decide if you want to relook at the whole honorarium as a whole. If you're going to make any changes, I think that it should still remain that the outside boards are included, but the change should be made to the honorarium itself. There were a number of changes. Well, there was one for sure that was made that council did not make a move on when we had, I think it was 1/3 of our honorarium that was was non-taxable, and it went to fully taxable, I think 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken.
2019.
I'm sorry?
I think that was in 2019.
2019, yeah. And there were a number of municipalities that right after that move, they relooked at their honorariums and increased them to make up the amount of honorarium that was lost through that move by the provincial government. This council did not do that. We just had the status quo. We remain with our increases as our collective agreement and management increases are done, an average of those increases, which I think is a good way to keep up with things as far as the honorarium is concerned. But again, I think if you're going to look at this, I think it probably should be left to the next council, that's at the table, and it probably should look at their whole honorarium as a whole. So for those reasons, I'm probably not going to support this. Thank you.
Councillor Dufour.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to offer a comment, if I may, to one of the things that Councillor Shoemaker and Councillor Bruni indicated, that there's a concern that if we did offer an incentive for doing extra work, that then people would seek to have those positions. I'd just like to point out that you have the exact same incentive operating with the current system. If you don't want to work harder, don't put your name forward to the jobs that require more work. You have the same incentive, but it's going in the opposite direction. So, when I look around at the work done by boards and committees of council, one of the boards that I see that has added the most value to the Sault Ste. Marie taxpayer in my 4 years has been the PUC board. That's a board that has substantially increased the dividend that it is directing directly back into the pockets of Sault Ste. Marie taxpayers. And it's done that with a board that is compensated. I don't think that folks on that board are compensated to the level that they maybe get with their day jobs, but their time is valued. And the value put on that time, I think, results in those board members taking the extra time to think outside the box and to do creative things that do take a lot more of your time and work to undertake. Taking from that lesson, I compare it to what my experience has been on the DSAB board, and certainly not to name names, but we were missing quite a few councillors from voting on our DSAB board budget this past year, and that's a levy board that's like $75 to $85 million a year. Like, these are enormous financial responsibilities and commitments that we're expected to pay attention to. And yet, because it's one of the more difficult boards, the more time consuming boards, it's also a board that I don't feel like has gotten the attention to which it is due. And there's a lot more opportunities with boards like that to make significant investments in the community that are going to drive down the tax levy for taxpayers. But this work does not get done for free, and it does not get done if folks don't put the time forward to do it. So I think the current system doesn't work as well as it should, and I think that's why we're the only community in Ontario that uses it. So I will be supporting staff's recommendation to join our other comparator communities and pay for extra service. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, staff. Council, I'll just give you my thoughts, and then we can vote on this. Frankly, we all called an honorarium. I've had this debate with the CEO in our offices. I don't believe it should be called an honorarium anymore. We used to have, for everybody who's watching, a third of our respective salaries wasn't taxable. And in that respect, that I think was an honorarium. That was changed a number of years ago. And as one of my colleagues pointed out, when that was changed, a number of municipalities adjusted their pay, their respective councillor and mayor pay up to take into consideration the loss or the decrease in pay that occurred at the time. We didn't do that here. We kept them the same, notwithstanding the change in the tax consequences to a third of the pay. So to me, it's a salary, and I think the salary you're paid is to serve on this at this table on this council. I for the entirety of my mayoralty focused on a few things. I decided to focus on a few things that I wanted to make a real difference in, and two of those boards were paid. One of which was the PUC board. And for 7 years, going into my 8th year, I am the only person at the board that isn't paid. So the remainder of the PUC board is paid, but I am not paid because of this rule. So I think that one of the things we want to make clear to the community is we're not suggesting we should be paid for boards and committees. There are a few boards and committees, and just a few of them. So I actually don't accept the contention this would represent a large amount of money. But there's a few of them that actually have paid, but Sault Ste. Marie City councillors cannot receive the remuneration because of that dated bylaw. And frankly, after 7 years of contributing to two of those boards that the other members are paid on, it doesn't make sense to me on a going forward basis that the next mayor and councillors wouldn't be paid. I would like to think that nobody would put their name forward just for the pay. I would like to think they put their name forward because of their interest and serving on those boards, and they're interested in serving the community. But it's not sensible to have a hybrid system where you're walking into a meeting, you're doing the same work as everybody else, but you're treated differently because of, frankly, an antiquated municipal bylaw that says you can't receive anything on top of your salary here at the municipality. It seems to me it's not going to affect me. It's not going to kind of affect me this year or going forward basis. But if the people who are go to the DSAB meetings and serve the community in the DSAB, if some of them are being paid, I think all of them are being paid. So right now you have DSAB colleagues from other municipalities that are doing the same work as you that aren't being paid. On the police service board, the provincial appointees and the municipal appointee is being paid, but the mayor and the councillor aren't. The PUC board, all of the PUC board members are being paid, but the mayor isn't. It seems to me that it's reasonable to not have a bylaw that says you can't receive pay when it exists. Frankly, I think your time's valuable. I think your contribution's valuable. And I think if you receive a nominal stipend in response for that time and that contribution, there's nothing negative about that. It's not going to affect the levy. And I think, frankly, it would be a lot more politically unpalatable to change all of your salaries and the mayor's salary. I think this is something that will have an inconsequential effect in the levy, but it's a reasonable way to approach it. And it makes all board members at all the boards approach those boards or be treated by those organizations in an equal manner. This is not going to create pay for the boards that don't have pay. It's just going to treat all of the members equally who are at those board meetings and contribute the time to those board meetings. Certainly didn't affect the amount of time and effort I put into the Sault Ste. Marie Police Service Board or the PUC, but there was really no reasonable basis to treat me differently than the remainder of the people that were serving on those committees. So in that respect, and out of respect for the mayor and councillors that follow me, I will be supporting this policy change. I feel like it's the right thing to do, and it doesn't enrich me in any way. I no longer sit on the Sault Ste. Marie Police Services Board, so in that respect, Councillor Shoemaker would get the benefit of that on a going forward basis. And certainly council would have the authority to have the bylaw go in effect at the beginning of the next council term if there was any reticence to have the change this council term. But I look at the amount of time and effort that someone like Councillor Dufour has put in at the DSAB, and frankly believe he should be remunerated for that time and effort. I think there were a few critical things that were pointed out that we could be proud of. We have a very small budget for our meals, and we have a small budget for travel. We have reduced our own size, and we have probably on a per capita basis one of the most modest, if not the modest, budgets for mayor and councillors. So there's a lot to be proud of and how responsible we are with taxpayer monies and how we're paid. I can't make sense of the current approach to committees that differentiate between members based on whether they come from council or not. And while I agree with Councillor Shoemaker, it's not really broken. It doesn't make a whole lot of difference to me on a going forward basis. I think there is a better way to do it, and that better way is proposed to you tonight, and I would support it accordingly. So, Madam Clerk, I think this is a recorded vote. So,
yes, I have a motion by Councillors Dufour. I did have a courtesy seconder as Councillor Nero. I've changed that to Councillor Bezo-Allen, as Councillor Nero has indicated he's not in support. The motion is resolved that the report of the city clerk dated February 22, 2022 concerning council remuneration bylaw updates be received, and that the recommended amendments be reflected in a bylaw to appear on a future council agenda. And I have opened the vote.
Okay, so all in favor, can you leave your hand up so I can count, please? So in favor, we have Gardy, Dufour, Bezo-Allen, and myself. That's 4. So opposed. Oh, sorry, Councillor Hilsinger, what were you? Opposed or in favor? In favor. She was in favor. Okay, so that's 5. Opposed. So now I need to see opposed. Councillor Christian, Councillor Hollingsworth, Councillor Bruni, and Councillor Nero. So it's tied, so it fails in the tie. Correct?
That is correct. And that is what I have. Councillor in favor, Mayor Provenzano, Councillor Dufour, Councillor Bezo-Allen, Councillor Hilsinger, and Councillor Gardy. And opposed, Councillor Christian, Councillor Hollingsworth, Councillor Shoemaker, Councillor Bruni, and Councillor Nero.
That is correct. So I'm just gonna ask you, staff, because it really only failed on the one recommendation. Where does that leave you with moving this forward otherwise?
I would suggest that as housekeeping, we do the amendment to the bylaw that contains the provision that says that those boards that pay an honoraria are supposed to be remitting the equivalent of that honoraria to the treasurer, given that it's my understanding from the CFO that that has not in fact ever happened. So I would suggest that we bring back an amendment to remove that to reflect actual practice.
Okay, so then I think you can do that, and then council will have a chance to vote at that in the next meeting. If it's not happening, we should make that amendment. And frankly, I don't know that how you would pay the city for work that other people were doing in any event. I don't think council would want to see that, because it would be, if they don't want to see the levy be increased in any event, they're not going to want to see it be increased to go right back into city coffers. So you can move forward, make that amendment, and bring that back to council for its approval when the bylaw gets back.
Okay. And agenda item 6.15, potential demolition incentive. There is a report and a motion pulled from consent, which was by councillors Dufour and Bruni. Resolved that the report of the planning director dated February 22, 2022 concerning potential demolition incentive be received as information.
Okay, so before I get to the motion, and I'll let Councilor Dufour speak to that, followed by Councilor Shoemaker if you'd like to. I'm just going to ask if anybody has any questions on 615 before we get to the motion that Dufour and Shoemaker put before us. Seeing none, Councilor Dufour, do you want to speak to this?
Sure, quickly, and then I'll let Councillor Shoemaker speak to it as well, as I believe he penned the motion. But where our conversation was last time, we were talking about the background report with planning. We've discussed CIPs a number of times. During that conversation at our background OP meeting, the director of planning had indicated that CIPs could be done concurrently with official plans, and that typically he had understood them to be staff initiated. However, I think Councillor Shoemaker and I, especially after reading this report, wanted to add council's support to getting a new growth CIP going. And so that is the basis for this motion. Thanks.
Councilor Shoemaker?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've brought, I think Councilor Dufour and I have brought 2 or 3 of these motions with respect to specific CIPs. There was one on, there's this one on demolition. There was one on derelict properties. There was one, I think, on bringing abandoned properties back up to occupancy. And they all have come back with a report of this nature, which is, you could do it, and here's why you ought not to do it. And I think certainly the sense of council's collective opinion that I've got from all those discussions is we want to see one of these things advance so that we can try from a holistic perspective to tackle the issue we're trying to get at. And we've started doing that through the property standards process, but it's, I think, as has been mentioned at previous council meetings, the carrot and the stick approach. The stick approach is the property standards amendments that we made, and hopefully this can represent the carrot approach. So what we're not looking for, if this motion passes, is a report on why it could be done or why it couldn't be done. We're looking for a community improvement plan to be drafted and brought to council for its consideration. I hope that's clear enough in the operative clause. And then at that time, council can decide whether to approve it or not. But really, we want, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn here, Councillor Dufour, we want a drafted community improvement plan that addresses a number of these issues that we've tried to tackle on a one-off basis up to today, unsuccessfully.
Thank you, Councilor Shoemaker. That was clear to me in the motion, and I can agree with you on the history of this. I think council has communicated pretty clearly over the last few years that we wanted to make some distinct progress with respect to these areas. And I think the number of times we asked for a CIP to be kind of considered in this respect, it's a pretty clear indication that there's a strong desire for CIP. Do we have any other comments or questions, council? Okay, all in favor of the motion?
Mr. Mayor, I've opened it, but while I've opened it for vote, I'll read the motion by Councillors Shoemaker and Dufour.
Yeah, go ahead.
Whereas council has on a number of occasions expressed its view that property standards in certain areas of the community require significant improvement, and whereas at least 2 motions seeking community improvement plans have been brought forward to address the desire of council to see improvement in the city's property standards, as well as the use of existing housing stock in the community. And whereas city council had sought to incentivize either the adaptive reuse of existing buildings or the demolition and redevelopment of unsalvageable buildings. And whereas no new community improvement plans have been brought forward despite the request made by council, and whereas on the February 22, 2022 City Council agenda, a report identifying a possible community improvement plan was not recommended by staff, now therefore be it resolved that council directs staff to bring forward a draft of a community improvement plan that addresses both the adaptive reuse of existing buildings in the community and the option of demolishing and redeveloping unsalvageable buildings in the community to council for its decision within the next 6 months. And I am waiting for Councillor Christian.
So just all in favor? So for the clerk's recording, okay, I think you got unanimous there, Madam Clerk. I don't see any opposed.
Okay, I have that as unanimous as well. And that will bring, we've done agenda item 7.3.1. So that will bring us to agenda item 8.1, a motion by councillors Shoemaker and Hilsinger. Whereas in 2017, a motion was brought seeking a plan for downtown street closures. And whereas in January 22, a staff report indicated that the Downtown Association had a number of concerns about weekend downtown street closures, and staff was not recommending the weekend downtown street closures. And whereas council expressed a desire to continue pursuing activating the downtown for additional events, now therefore be it resolved that council directs staff bring a plan to council for additional activation of Queen Street or nearby areas by working in conjunction with the Downtown Association, but that such plan be the City of Sault Ste. Marie's plan.
Hey, Councilor Shoemaker, go ahead. You're on mute, Councilor Shoemaker.
Thank you. This is a follow-up from the January, I think it was 11th council meeting, January 10th or 11th council meeting, where we had that report back on downtown street closures in the summertime. And there was opposition to it for a number of reasons, all of which were detailed out fairly specifically in a letter from the Downtown Association. It seems that the request from 5 years ago that was answered this past month was taken too narrowly, certainly more narrowly than I anticipated it would be. However, I've tried to draft this resolution as broadly as possible to provide the flexibility to come back to us with a plan that works for the city and for the Downtown Association. I'm not dictating that it has to be on the weekend, not dictating that it has to be every Friday and Saturday night, not dictating it has to be in the summer. What I want is for staff to work with the Downtown Association to come up with a plan. However, I wanted to be clear that we are requesting this because it's something we want to see, and that the decision will not simply be given to the Downtown Association to make. This is something that is, if council endorses it, important for us to advance in our own respect or from our own perspective. And hopefully it'll pass tonight with the support of council to send that message. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Shoemaker. Councilor Hilsinger, did you want to add anything to that?
Just briefly to further to Councillor Shoemaker's comments, I think that, you know, we have a tremendous opportunity, especially with the new plaza coming online and many other specific investments and amazing investments that are happening both on the private and the public side downtown. And this is another step in cultural vitality. I know that I know this can be figured out. It can be, and that's all I'm going to say. It's a great opportunity. Let's see what we could make out of it.
So for my clarity before I'll go to you, Councilor Bezual, this isn't a matter of street closures, right? Councilor Shoemaker, you're saying this, we want to see a plan about activating quote unquote the downtown.
I specifically left it broad. It may be street closures once the report comes back, but it's not necessarily street closures.
Yeah, okay. So we got Councilor Vezel and I think Councilor Nero too.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, and I certainly appreciate the essence of the resolution from my colleagues. However, there's one really missing piece in all of this, and that are the downtown business owners. So the downtown just isn't the DTA or the city or the street. It's, you know, it's very much a combination of business owners, building owners, leasehold people, different variety of businesses. So the way the motion is written, I'm not going to support it. I think there needs to be input from business owners and also people who live downtown. So there is opposition, as we know, being on council, from noise and that sort of thing, from street closures, street parties, from the people that live downtown. So the way the motion is written, I'm not going to support it because I think there's a huge missing piece in all of this, which is consultation with the people that actually work, live, and have businesses downtown, not just the downtown association, if we take in the whole essence of what we consider to be downtown.
Okay, Councilor Nero, did you have comments there?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did have a question. I think your comment kind of clarified it a little, where we're not talking about just closures on Queen Street. I can support this. I'm not sure where, again, the event organizers fit into this plan. Are they going to be contacted by staff? Let me talk specifically something like the Queen Street Cruise, where we want the street to remain open, Queen Street to remain open, but we require side streets to be closed sometimes. How would that affect something like that? Does that just go on whenever we expect to have it happen downtown, and we ask for the continually streets being closed that we require, or do we have to fit into a plan such as this?
I'm going to have to ask Councilor Shoemaker to speak to that, or Councilor Pilsinger.
I don't see anything here that would limit the ability of an event organization to fit within this plan. I think this is for the city to not necessarily come up with events, but ensure that events are happening in the downtown or nearby areas. So if that takes form of an organized event from the outside, like the Queen Street Cruise, I think it would fit within this. If you know, but if there's some discomfort with the wording, I'd be happy to consider a friendly amendment.
No, I'm okay with the clarification, just because it fits into the whole reasoning behind something like the Queen Street Cruise. The Queen Street Cruise started to benefit the downtown area. That's what we wanted to do, and as an event that brought people downtown. And I see this as an extension of that, but more run by the city as opposed to the downtown association. Now, I should say in this case, the Queen Street Cruise is its own identity, and it just worked in cooperation with the city and the downtown association. So it's neither a downtown association event or a city event. So I just wanted to be clear that these kind of events would still be able to be ongoing, and they wouldn't be at risk of something like this happening.
Yeah, I don't think this would put events at risk. I think staff would be in a position where they'd have to consider the kind of global event calendar and put something together based on it. So I think the natural evolution of this would be staff considering the events that already exist and as part of the activation of downtown.
Yeah, you bring up a good point when you're looking at, events that already exist. There's certain dates that are picked for these events because they have to fit into those dates because maybe, in the case of Queen Street Cruise again, there are events of these kinds all over the place. And you try and place them on a weekend where all the attendees, they're the people that partake in that event, are not in other municipalities partaking in their events. So you can't be in a position where your date gets moved, let's say, because of a plan that's brought down to try and encompass all the events. So just a few concerns. I'm sure they can be worked out. I have no problem supporting the motion.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask you to turn your camera on there? So this would obviously fall under your department. So if we receive this resolution back, when I read it and it wasn't specific to street closures, is it fair to me to kind of conclude that, like, you see, especially when you read the last report, and I'm going to, maybe summarize it too pointedly, it essentially said, look, we're working on a big downtown project. Let's get that done, and then we'll start activating and show you what that looks like. It was kind of like, let's no to street closures, but the rest of it, let's just kind of see what things look like once we get done the work we're working on. And maybe that's not what was intended to be communicated, but that's kind of what I was thinking when I read it. In that context, and in all the kind of discussions we've had about the downtown, about the plaza, it's fair to say that staff is planning on activating the downtown and working on different plans to activate the downtown in the near term, in the midterm, is it not?
To you, Mr. Mayor, absolutely. I think we've already started assembling a list of events that happen in the downtown currently. To Councillor Nero's point, we've started the brainstorming activities on all the activation events that can happen within the plaza. I know the BIA, who we've been dialoguing with, they currently have existing plans to continue with some of their events that have happened that do close down the street. And, certainly we have events like the Santa Claus Parade and the Rotary Fest, all of those events we're factoring into that activation plan. And tree lighting ceremony, exactly. And Councillor Nero, the car show, there's a number of these events that happen now that we're taking inventory of, assembling a calendar. No doubt we're very focused on activating that plaza. We're making a significant investment, obviously, as the city, and we want to activate that space as much as we possibly can to make it a successful venue for the community. And I think there are events that are going to complement that, and we'll work together with that. The Mill Market, for example, they have a number of events through the year, and moving into the Brock Street location, we'll tie those into the plaza as well. So yes, we're taking kind of a holistic view on activation and how we bring all these things together.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest activation points for this council's decision making is when we get the Mill Market located in the heart of the downtown. That's going to make it a big difference. But so to get to my point, I think this is where you're going in any event. And I think all this motion from my perspective really does is put a timeline on your team to say, get us a plan back in 6 months. So my question is, do you see that as problematic or difficult?
To you, Mr. Mayor, I don't believe so. It aligns with the work that we're doing now and that's underway.
Yeah, that was my impression. Okay, and I think to Councillor Vezo-Allen's point, there's nothing in the resolution that stops you from consulting broadly, and I would encourage you to do that as you put this together. Any other questions or comments on this, council? So the vote's up on eScribe. I actually have my eScribe up now. So Madam Clerk, have you read the motion yet? Okay, so let's read the motion.
I did. I'm waiting for count. Oh, I'm just waiting for you.
Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
So I have 9 in favor with Councillor Vezo-Allen opposed.
So Madam Clerk, maybe we can start 8.2 by you reading the resolution, and then I'll speak to it briefly. And then I'll go to Councillor Hilsinger. we'll have to change Councillor Scott. So can I have a seconder for this?
I understand that Councillor Dufour has agreed to second.
Okay, very good.
So I have a motion by Councillors Hilsinger and Dufour, whereas the attached presentation regarding a butterfly house was made to Mayor Provenzano, the Deputy CAO Community Development and Enterprise Services, and the Director of Tourism and Community Development. And whereas a butterfly house would be a novel and interesting feature for our community, now therefore be it resolved that staff be requested to work with Atomica to assess the proposal and return to council with a report as to the feasibility of a butterfly house in Sault Ste. Marie.
So council, a couple of years ago, John Yeady's brought this proposal to me, and it was either just before COVID started or kind of after COVID started, but it was around that time. And I thought it was a great idea then, but as things happen, other things took our time and attention. And he's had meetings with staff, and there's been some discussion about it. We had this presentation very recently, and I want to thank them for that. It was certainly really worth listening to. John and Eva DeBoer and I met with Tom and Travis, and really everybody likes the idea. There's lots of positive elements to it. It's a really novel thing. It would be an interesting thing in our community. And frankly, we do have greenhouses. We have an horticultural department. I think the city very much really likes our horticultural department, because I get lots of compliments all the time about the great job they do with the flowers around our community. So it's worth considering further, but really staff can't get into the really nitty gritty on this and the assessment on it unless they know it's something council wants them to look at. So when we had our last meeting and realized this hadn't really gained any traction over the last couple of years, it wasn't because there wasn't passion behind it, or there wasn't because everybody didn't like the idea, everybody loved it. It was just because staff needed some direction, that it was something that council wanted it to look at. And, it was important to me that I got that confirmation from you too. It doesn't matter that I like an idea myself. It has to be something that we as a group thinks it's worth considering. So what I said to Eva and John was, and Tom and Travis for that matter, I said, look, I'll bring this to council. I'll get their feedback on it. If council wants it to be considered, then staff has that very clear mandate from us. They can look at it. They can look at costs. They can look at funding opportunities. They can look at other partnerships. We didn't discuss those specifically, but there's a number of different groups that we could partner with that are identified in the slide deck. And an obvious one is obviously Science North is another partner that we can look at partnering with. But in any event, it's a really neat idea. I think it would be a beautiful asset in our community. I thank John, Dedes, and Eva DeBoer for their work on it and the effort they've made to get it to this point. But until staff's going to really invest some time looking at it, they need a go ahead from us. So I appreciate Councillor Hilsinger championing this and putting this together to get in front of council. And if you want them to look at it, they'll report back to us once they do and give us some sense of whether they think we should do it and what the cost to it would be and what it would look like. So Councillor Hilsinger, did you have anything to add?
I'm tremendously passionate about this project. I think it's incredible to build on what Atomica has already created in our community. We know botanical from the report, we know botanical tourism is growing. This idea combines education, awareness, science, art, beauty, tourism, soulfulness, wellness, sanctuary, beautiful gardens, jobs. I'm so excited, and I really hope everybody will be willing to support taking a look at this and seeing how we can make it happen.
Thank you, Councillor Hilsinger. Anything else, council? I can confirm, in talking to Tom and Travis, they think it's worth looking at. They'd be happy to look at it and get a report back to us after they do some work on it and work with the community partners to have a good consideration. Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none?
Carries unanimously. And that will take us to agenda item 11, the consideration and passing of bylaws. I have a motion by Councillors Dufour and Bruni. Resolved that all bylaws under item 11 of the agenda under date February 22, 2022 be approved.
All in favor?
And I have a motion by Councillors Bezowalan and Bruni that this council now adjourn.
All in favor? Thank you, council. I look forward to seeing you in person at our next meeting. Everybody take care and stay safe.
Take care.